Started. If everybody could please rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I thank everybody for coming out to our June 1st workshop meeting. We're going to get things started this evening with our Student of the Month presentations with our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Michael Brooks.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Let's jump right in and start with the high school.
All right, we'd like to call up Marlboro High School junior, Carrie Ann Phillips. Carrie Ann has been nominated by Pete Carafano, our college biology teacher. Mr. Carafano is unable to join us tonight. He's at track sectionals. Rob DeMarco, our science department chair, is going to present in his place.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler. Good evening, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. Usually I just speak, so I'm going to be reading a statement from Mr. Carafano this evening. As Mr. Lawler said, he's unable to attend due to track obligations. We were all going like this, I'll go, because we really need to honor Carrie Ann this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and read Mr. Carafano's words. As a student in my 8th and 9th period college biology class, it didn't take long for Carrie Ann to distinguish herself from her peers. From the very first day, she demonstrated a level of intelligence, organization, and maturity far beyond her years. As the school year progressed, these attributes also earned her the recognition and respect of her classmates. Carrie Ann is always willing to work with other students that may be struggling with difficult course material. I know I can always rely on Carrie Ann to ask intelligent, appropriate questions, as well as bring a mature sense of humor to my class. Now with the school year almost complete, it is easy to see why Carrie Ann is looked upon as a role model within her class and her grade, as well as why she will eventually like to pursue a career in the field of elementary education. One of the things most easily noticed about Carrie Ann is the dedication she gives and the pride she puts into her work. Her absolute best effort goes into every assignment, lab write-up, and test that she completes. It is no surprise that with these attributes, she earned a Biology 105 fall semester average of 99%, an A, and the highest of any of my students. Wow. College biology. That's fantastic. She also currently has one of the highest averages in Biology 106 for the spring semester. In closing, I would like to extend a thank you to Carrie Ann's parents who are here this evening. You have a very intelligent, hardworking, friendly, and respectful daughter, and those are qualities that you are to be commended for as well. This is one of the most critical academic and developmental times of Carrie Ann's life, and I know that with your continued support, she will find success no matter where life takes her. I look forward to working with Carrie Ann, not just for the remainder of this school year, but throughout her senior year and beyond. Carrie Ann, congratulations. Good for you. Very nice. Thank you. I have something for you. Go right over this way.
Congratulations. Well deserved. Well deserved.
I like that. Yes, Dad's got to get the picture. Sorry. How about we jump down to the elementary school?
Way to keep us on our toes, Mr. Brooks. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are very excited to introduce right now Marlboro Elementary School's Student of the Month for June, and this is the last opportunity that this student has to be Student of the Month because he's heading to the middle school. So get ready. Mr. Stanmeyer, you have a great student coming. This is Thomas Rusk, and he's here with his family, including his grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Rusk, and he's going to be introduced by his teachers, Mrs. Anusco, Mrs. Canino, and Mrs. Fox. Thomas, come on over, love.
Our team, Mr. Beck, Mrs. Canino, Ms. Fox, and myself couldn't be happier or more proud to present the 5th grade Student of the Month, Thomas Rusk. Tommy is a very strong academic student who excels in all areas, but without a doubt has a strong passion for writing. I say passion because after a full day of learning, Tommy enjoys going home and writing stories on his computer. He informed me that he likes to write about varied things and that he often uses topics learned in school. His mom shared at parent conference time that Thomas often researches the topics online, and this is very evident in the details and his word choice. To give you an idea, I'd like to read an excerpt from a story that he is currently working on entitled A Message in Glimpses. The small town of Brownsburg sat right beside the sea, eagerly waiting for the next wave to crash upon its shore that lay beside the boardwalk. The boardwalk was always damp and smelt of cotton candy and lollipops, with the occasional whiff of seafood. Along the boardwalk there lived a few buildings: a candy store owned by Mrs. Duran, a souvenir shop owned by Mr. Andrews, and a beautiful Ferris wheel run by a couple of mechanics were some of the attractions that waited to be viewed by the eye of tourists. But like many small towns, the tourist amounts were dropping, and slowly many of the entrepreneurs were shutting down their shops. Mr. Andrews was the first one to quit after he was told that Hurricane Irene would be darting in shortly. And it goes on. As you can see from that, Tommy is a very talented 5th grader. However, more importantly, he's also a very well-rounded young man. Thomas is what I would call a quiet leader, who leads by example and is very much respected by his classmates, his peers, and his teachers. I'd like to end this presentation by sharing a few of his classmates' comments. Tommy is helpful. The other day, he worked with me on writing my bio poem. Tommy is nice to everyone in the class, and he has a good sense of humor. He's a smart kid who even makes math look simple. Tommy is very kind. He gave me half of his PB&J when I forgot my lunch. Congratulations, Tommy. An excellent job, Mr. and Mrs. Rusk. This is for you, sir. You can have that. Okay? It's from the class, huh?
Tommy, congratulations also from Mr. Beck, who wanted to be here. He did have a pressing issue to take care of, but he is with you in spirit. Thank you and congratulations.
Okay, Mr. Stanmeyer, middle school's up next.
Right.
Mr. Brooks and the board, thank you very much for having me tonight. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce our student of the month, Jessica Singh. Her nominating teacher is Mrs. Alicia Hudak, who has a previous engagement, who is not here. So on behalf of her and Mrs. Clinton and the Purple team, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you, Jessica. And since we're losing you to the high school next year, I'm very happy we have Thomas coming up next year to take your place. So without further ado, yeah, come on up. Well, Jessica, I know primarily through her performance in The Lion King this year. She was Mufasa and played a wonderful role. I got to bring my son to the show, and he was just enthralled with her performance. So at this point, I will read. So Mrs. Hudak says, "To thine own self be true," is one of the most famous quotes from the beloved bard William Shakespeare, and a mantra of one of Marble Middle School's finest, Jessica Singh. Jessica has been an exemplary student throughout her years at MMS, showcasing her academic talents and challenging herself with her own high standards. Her dedication to groups such as FCLA and National Junior Honor Society showcases her commitment to her own education as well as to those in her midst. I would like to share a few vignettes from some of her advisors and teachers. All right. Mrs. Hudak writes, "Jessica is a determined and resilient young woman. Last year in ELA class, she was published in poetry anthology with 13 of her peers. I have come to see her grace, confidence, and maturity flourish in the past 2 years, both inside the classroom and in extracurriculars. She challenged herself by playing the male role of Mufasa in our production of Lion King Jr. and overcame many obstacles, including an overwhelmingly large headpiece. The poise and balance Jessica possesses allows her to assume this role with power and the authority of a king. At the state FCLA conference, she hosted a workshop in self-defense and karate for the 150 student attendees and also competed in a service project presentation qualifying to attend nationals this July in Tennessee. I wish her all the luck in her future endeavors, and I know this young lady, with her, the sky is the limit." Another teacher writes, "Jessica has consistently been an asset in my classroom this school year. She is respectful, hardworking, polite, and caring. Jessica is always a student that you can count on to brighten your day. She has a sense of humor that is appreciated in class by both her peers and her teachers. Jessica is willing to go above and beyond for her classmates as she is a teacher at heart." Another teacher writes, "Jessica Singh is an amazing student in my class, and I know that she works very hard to achieve her high grades in all her classes. She was also a very valuable performer in the school play this year. As an actress, Jessica is in her element. She is an incredible performer as well as singer. It amazes me that she can get so much done and so quickly, but I know that she has excellent leadership qualities. Jessica does not shy away from challenges. To the contrary, she sees all things through to the end like a leader will do." Another teacher writes, "Ms. Singh has been a ray of sunshine in class this year. She is always willing to take risks and takes on tasks with confidence and determination. Jessica seems unaffected by the typical middle school drama and instead has risen above as a true leader and role model. She will be greatly missed at the middle school." In conclusion, the Purple team is extremely proud of all Jessica's accomplishments and wishes her well at the high school and beyond. We hope that she continues to march to her own drum and be true to herself as she faces an exciting future ahead. So once again, congratulations, Jessica, Mr. and Mrs. Singh. Well done.
Well, congratulations, Carrie Ann, Jessica, and Tommy. Tommy, right? Not Thomas? Tommy? All right. It's interesting because certainly many times we hear about some tremendous academic accolades from some of the children that come up, but it's not always academics. That's not really the primary purpose of something like this. We want to recognize beyond that. So when you hear words like set their own high standards, hosted a self-defense workshop, passion for writing, an example of wonderful writing with that passion, reliable, wonderful sense of humor, friendly. This is what it takes, or this is what it is to be a Duke, and I'm really appreciative of families lending us their children every single day and us being able to recognize them. But most importantly, out of all of this, I love that you gave up half a PB&J. I mean, that's a real friend. I love peanut butter and jelly, especially the peanut butter side. But listen, thank you very much, folks. Congratulations to our students of the month. I really appreciate what you do with us every day. Keep doing what you're doing, kids. Please. Thanks. Yes.
We're going to keep moving with our celebration of students with a special Olympic award ceremony, again with our superintendent of schools.
Yes, earlier in the month there was a competition up at West Point, which is more of a regional Special Olympics event, and we have student athletes that represented us from Marlboro that attended and competed in those events. And tonight we're recognizing those students, so I'm going to pass off to Ms. Mealy, our Director of Special Services, Student Services, excuse me, that's going to take this for us. So.
Thank you. On behalf of the Board of Education, Central Administration, and all three of our buildings, I'd like to take just a few moments to recognize the students that participated this year in the Special Olympics at West Point. On May 6th, we had several students attend with volunteer faculty and staff members to participate in the Special Olympics. If you've never been to the Special Olympics, it is an amazing, amazing opportunity to watch our students compete athletically and to see our cadets from West Point volunteer their time to support our children. It's a spectacular day. Everyone that was there had a great time. At this moment, I'm going to call the students up that are here. You're going to get a certificate, and I'm going to ask that you stand up in the front until the end until we can get a picture of all of you. And I'm going to ask Miss Valerie Bardunias from the high school to come help me pass out the certificates for our student athletes. So first from Marlboro Elementary School, we have Anaya Jones. Marlboro Middle School, Ryan Crosby. Marlboro Elementary, Joshua Mickle. Marlboro Elementary, Christian Doria. Marlboro Elementary, Jayshuan Rosado. Marlboro Elementary, Malachi Woods. Marlboro High School, Katerina Masillo. Austin Hannigan. Michael Miles. And Crystal Davis. So with any sports team, we need a coach. This team is extremely fortunate to have several volunteer staff members to help support them with their practices, their time trials, and the actual event. From Marlboro Elementary School, I'd like to recognize faculty and staff, and please come up and join your students. Liz Mann, Mary Ibsen, Noreen Martinez, Mary Lou Conti, and Doris Garcia Palacios. From the middle school, Mr. Tyler Beck, Donna Sersha, and Michael Monroe. From the high school, Gina Haight, Janine DeVogel, and Valerie Bardunias. I also would like to thank the spouses and family of all our volunteer coaches, because it does take a lot of extra time away from the family to support this, and we actually had some spouses that helped coach as well. So thank you all very much for supporting our student athletes.
Our final presentation for the evening is a special recognition for some students down at the Marlboro Elementary School, and I will let Mr. Brooks explain to you the background and circumstances surrounding this special recognition.
Actually, the wonderful part about being the superintendent is you get to delegate. So this one is actually delegated to our Director of Transportation, Business, and Finance, Mr. Witherow.
Good evening. Just going to wait. Mr. Martucci is joining us, along with Adrian, who is the terminal manager for Quality Bus Service. So in a minute, Ms. Walsh is going to come up and present an award. We just wanted to make a brief introduction. Student safety is a top priority of the district, not only in the school buildings, but in every aspect of our school day. This includes student safety while on school buses. We work very closely with Quality Bus Service to ensure students are well prepared for any type of emergency that may occur while being transported to and from school. Ms. Walsh will now introduce two students who displayed exemplary behavior in assisting their fellow students during a recent minor bus accident. Ms. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Witherow. Joining me and Mrs. Cameron, my assistant principal, is Sarah Amadeo. She is our administrative intern this year, and it is our pleasure to introduce to you right now, and I'm not exactly sure if you know why you're here, but the letter was a little vague. That was on purpose. As a principal, sometimes our contact about the bus is not always positive. So we were so thrilled to be able to have positive news, and today I actually had positive news about a lunch recess situation also, and a child received an award for that. So one of the things to remember is the principal is your pal, P-A-L, and we're here to celebrate the good times. So I want to introduce right now Corey Jones and Jacob Gulkin. Did you know why you were here? Yes. Following the bus accident and Mr. Brooks' suggestion that we publicly laud the boys, we were happy to be able to do such a thing and to bring them up for something great. We do have an award for them for being bus heroes. Put a miter on their neck. And we appreciate their help with the younger children on the bus during this incident. And we also have gift certificates for the boys for Barnes & Noble, because we still need to keep reading while we're flying with our superhero capes. We're very proud and thankful and very appreciative of you boys, and keep up the good work.
Mrs. Walsh, I think that Mark wanted to try and get a picture of you all.
You guys are front and center. You're in the front. Yeah, I think when you walk that way.
While we do not have a particularly long agenda this evening, the majority of our agenda actually is one resolution that just happens to be 4 pages long. we do understand and recognize that some of you may want to take your children home for the evening, so we're going to take a quick 3-minute recess and let anybody that needs to leave for the evening to go ahead and make their way to the door. So, oh, I've also been informed that the girls softball team was victorious this evening, so they'll advance to the next round of this Saturday in Long Island. We're going to get started. We're going to move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is public comment on this evening's agenda items. If you have any questions or comments on this evening's agenda items, please approach the podium, speak into the microphone, state your name and town, and address the Board of Education. Any questions or comments from the public on this evening's agenda items? Anybody? Mark? No? With that, we'll move on to our superintendent report for the evening with our superintendent of schools, Mr. Michael Brooks.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations to all of our sports teams throughout the year, but certainly we're very excited about this postseason and watching the different sports moving through the postseason, and certainly exciting tonight for the girls, so congratulations to them. I've really seen some wonderful shows, and I have to call them shows because our music events and our singers, our instrumentalists are just so talented that it's truly an entertaining show. Last night was no different. When I saw the middle schoolers perform Hallelujah, it was just tremendous. I got goosebumps. It was so good. So it's just really great stuff. If you have not been able to attend, please go on our YouTube page. We now have them recorded and posted on our YouTube page. And we're also live streaming all of these events at this point. So thank you, Mr. Bakatsias and your staff for making that happen. Our hope is at some point in time we're able to pass the torch on to a student group that can start taking on the task of video production in maybe a club environment or something along those lines, or maybe fused in through one of our classes to live stream and video archive some of these wonderful events. So it's really nice to see. It's especially nice to hear families talking about, oh, don't worry, you'll be able to see it later on YouTube, because Mr. Bakatsias overheard a family talking last night, and the young lady who just finished singing said, boy, I don't know if I sounded good. I thought I was a little bit off. And Mom said, we'll watch it on YouTube later, but you sounded great. I love that. And we're really capturing modern technology to help kids see themselves. In fact, the high school one that we did, I think when Mike and I were watching it, there were 16 live viewers during the event. By midday the next day, I think it was like 150 views or something like that, Mike, or that the kids went back and watched their performance. That's the stories we heard, so it's just wonderful. Speaking of Mr. Bakatsias, he's got a little bit of information to give us for the board's pleasure and certainly the public's pleasure. Something we're looking into administratively and is timely for the world we live in today. So, Mike, I know you're going to give a little update on mental health training and the alert app that alert apps we're reviewing.
Yes, there were two things actually. It's we were talking in one of our meetings about the mental health training that all staff must have at the beginning of the year. And I was actually reacting to an Onboard article in Onboard magazine that really talks about that. So they're really, I think we're seeing the tip of the iceberg of the mental health awareness and the mental health services that are going to be expected of K-12 education into the future. Kind of connected to that discussion is the administrative team has been talking about different services that are available that allow anonymous reporting by students, by parents, about events or particular student issues, to be able to report those anonymously and then have school officials and school staff follow up on those things. And anonymous alerts is an example of those. There are several examples. I think we're going to take that discussion into the summer, perhaps have some webinars with a few of these vendors, and then take a look at what service might work well here. In a well-rounded discussion, you talk about how is that going to impact the staff during the day, how many of those will you get, how do you follow up on that, and they do have a lot of information, and I think that we need to really take the time to take a look at what these different services do, what statistics show the impact to an instructional day is for staff and those types of things, and then probably in the future make this opportunity available here at Marlboro.
Thank you very much. So I expect as a board we'll hear a little bit more about this as time progresses. I know administrators are looking at this very cautiously and carefully because there's a lot of goods and a lot of questions that we have regarding some of the software that's out there. Certainly every vendor that offers this type of software touts its wonderful components, but there are certainly some questions that we have about some of the other elements of it too. So stay tuned. We're looking at it. Ms. Hecht has a small update that I'd like to ask her to brief the board on regarding an initiative we had talked about a while back and is going to start to bear some fruit hopefully this fall. So Ms. Hecht, if you talk about the tech squad that's going to be coming to the middle school and the high school.
Okay, we are very excited about this. We have up in the high school and in the middle school posted flyers that talks about and hopefully entices students to become part of the high school and middle school tech squad. The students are actually filling out an application. They have to present a resume. We're running workshops after school and during study halls to help students write these resumes. They are getting teacher recommendations, and then there will be an interview process for them to go through. So we're very excited. We've gotten a lot of students already responding and asking questions. Is it a paid position? What does it involve? How many hours? What am I responsible to do? I thought it was really cute. They were still interested when they heard that it wasn't a paid position, but I thought that was a cute question.
Just for those that aren't fully aware, what exactly are you expecting that the tech squad is going to be able to do for us?
Well, we're hoping that they will be sharing their tech expertise with peers and with teachers. So they're going to be looking at resources, teaching teachers and other students how to use those resources to enhance the instruction in the classroom and enhance the learning that's going on. So that's just a couple of the things. We're also going to have them attend workshops so that we can give them PD as well. So we're hoping too to get it. I mean, it's exciting. We hope that they're going to be fixing equipment and logging information. So
thank you.
I have a question. Who's going to teach them how to fix the equipment? Are we having somebody come in to teach?
do you want to answer that? It's not.
Well, fixing the equipment, I mean, there's a variety of things that these students can help us with, and they're going to come, what we believe is they're going to come with a certain skill set, working knowledge of Google and all of its apps. So there's some low-hanging fruit that will help other students and teachers really right away in the Google environment. And then as far as, let's say, some level one, sometimes these projectors don't work right away, and you just have to kind of reset the connections. There's just some like level one type of work that we can teach, some of the most common things that we troubleshoot with the AV system when we go in, or the speakers and these types of things. But that could grow as we see the skill level, but certainly there needs to be a clear separation. We're not handing over any login information or confidential information. Those will obviously stay separate and apart. This is the environment that they already have access to, that they just have excellent working knowledge of, and tips and tricks.
Yeah, I was just, because when you said they were fixing everything, I was just kind of curious if we were getting a new teacher in a new classroom and actually teaching them how to fix computers. So that's what I had thought. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question on that as well. As I recall, when we did the solar contract, they talked about a curriculum for the solar part. Is it possible that we can incorporate that into that program?
That's a terrific idea. Once we see things kind of come to fruition with the solar project and see the curriculum and the associated monies that go with it, fantastic.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Especially since there's that web portal that monitors the actual progress of
Yeah, that's kind of, I know they'd spoken about maybe some monitors where we could see our usage and stuff. I think it would probably fit in pretty well with.
It's a great idea. Thank you. A couple meetings ago, a question was asked regarding sub counts, so I have substitute counts for you. We have a total of 110 teacher substitutes, 47 paraprofessional substitutes, total of 17 custodial substitutes. It's 9 during the school year, 8 during the summer, and 5 cafeteria substitutes for a total of 194 substitutes.
So I do have a question with the 8 for the summer.
Yeah.
Are they inside, outside?
Yes.
They're both.
Substitute. Yeah, substitutes for whatever Larry needs. Am
Are
I correct in that, Pat?
these the students that we brought back?
They're
The young
substitutes. It's not. They're not regular daily workers. They're just the
they're
substitutes
just
for.
a summer.
No, they're substitutes for when a custodian is out in the summer. These people would sub for them.
So would they go underneath yearly because it wouldn't matter?
These the summer people may be the people that we bring in extra for the summer work, yes. So those would be potentially college students, former students that, you know, are interested in coming back and working with the
So
district.
they're
Some of
not
them-
really substitutes, it's a summer work job.
Essentially, I think we hire them as a substitute, and they just work over the summer.
Okay.
Right. They wouldn't be substitutes.
Temporary during the summer.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So it's not subbing purely as a sub, it's a temp
Correct.
work.
Correct.
Got it.
My other question is the teacher list of 110, Mike? Does that include the retired teachers that come back and sub too?
That's all subs, certified, non-certified.
And how many do we use per week? Do we know that?
I don't have that number.
I just want to, you know, like I
Depends
said, because
upon the
if we
day,
have
depends upon the
110,
week.
huh?
But those 110 aren't exclusive to Marlboro.
Right. I'm just kind of like just trying to get the number straightened out. We have 47, but we have nobody really to help in the cafeteria.
5.
There's just 5.
You know, the cafeteria they're mostly 2.5, 3-hour a day employees, so they don't really have sick time per se. So most of them are at work pretty regularly. So you don't really need as many subs to cover that area.
And when we do lunchroom monitors, is that included in that? Or,
Those are the paraprofessionals.
so these aren't all full days employees also? They're 2 hours, 3 hours if we're going down to the elementary school?
We can sub for whatever paraprofessional opening there is.
Thank you. What?
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The last 3 items are for Pat, so I'll pass it off to him. One is a pool update and the gym floor. The question that was raised regarding the track cracks, and also the financial report question from a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you. So we did, over the holiday weekend, have an incident where the pool was inadvertently overfilled. There was some minor flooding in the high school, and unfortunately, part of that flooding extended into the gymnasium. We do have approximately 1,000 square feet of flooring that is somewhat buckled. What happened is the pool had started to be filled on Friday. The person filling the pool got involved with a variety of other tasks, forgot that the pool was being filled. During a routine patrol, a police officer came through Friday night, noticed some water coming out of the building, made some phone calls. We got Larry and his crew, along with assistance from the Marlboro Fire Department, to come in and remove water from the pool to get it down to an acceptable level, and also squeegee and vacuum out the water that was in the hallways. Fortunately, the only damage is limited to that section of the gymnasium, and fortunately, in this time of year, we don't have a lot of events taking place in the gymnasium. They were able to utilize the other half of the gym. We did on Saturday, we had ServPro come in and set up equipment to try and mitigate the impact. They did significantly reduce the swelling of the wood, but there is still a noticeable variation in the floor. So we did meet with the insurance adjuster yesterday. We notified NYSER. They've come out, it is a covered claim, so we will be compensated for any additional sanding that takes place along. We every summer, we refinish those gym floors. We strip off the finish and restripe and refinish, and the varnishing will also be covered under the insurance for this year. So while there is a bit of an impact, it doesn't look like the flooring will have to be replaced. It just looks like some additional sanding in that area will take place of it. I've talked with Larry. We do have a plan in place to try and prevent this type of incident from ever occurring again in the future. It's my understanding that it has occurred previous to my arrival here, but we have a couple of ideas, and we've reached out to some vendors who are getting us some information on how we could, change that fill process so that it would completely eliminate this possibility from occurring in the future. The second, on the track, we did receive a concern that the track has some cracks in it. Every year, Larry and his guys do repair work to the track. They have a special type of caulk that they can use to fill the cracks. Unfortunately, this situation right now is kind of like the potholes on the road in March. We can't really fix it yet because the temperatures aren't right. The product that's used to repair these cracks requires a full 24-hour period of temperatures above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So with the variations we've had in temperatures recently, we're not quite at that time of year yet. We're able to make that repair, but they do make those repairs every single year. And as soon as we can get some consistent temperatures above 70 degrees overnight, we'll be making those repairs again. And we do have a plan. That track, the condition of the track was noticed in our 5-year capital plan, and we will be discussing with the facilities committee, addressing the issues on that capital improvement plan.
I had complained about the track last year also, and especially the first 2 lanes, they really are pitted because that's where most of the kids do run. And I did, like I said, in last year they were supposed to fix it and didn't, and I've noticed.
Well, they can't fix the pitting. That's from the cleats on the kids' shoes.
Right.
That will be repaired when we address the entire track itself.
I'm just letting you know, the whole track is getting pitted. There are pieces that are taken out of it now because I do walk that track.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more concerned now with the cracks getting more and more.
Yep,
Especially,
we are very aware that the track is in need of repair, and that's why it was noted in the building condition survey, and that's why the facilities committee will be addressing that going forward. It's not anything that's going to be fixed this year or next school year, but we will be presenting a plan to the board to address all the issues on the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Because it's just, it definitely needs to be seriously looked at. That track, because it's not holding up the way it should have held up when we put it in.
Yeah, I don't know what the...
Just to make sure we're clear on this too, the track is absolutely a usable track that meets all the current standards.
Correct.
So there's no
It's not right,
issues
but
that we
it's
can't use the
getting-
track.
right,
So
right,
we'll
right.
make sure we're clear.
No,
on that.
right.
It's
We
being
use the
addressed
track.
through the building condition survey that the facilities committee will work on. It's absolutely on the list, it's already on the radar, and it will be looked at during the course of the school year next year to develop a plan on how we're going to eventually have to replace it. It's true, we're going to have to replace it at some point.
Yeah.
It's definitely not in the short term like in this summer. It's
Correct.
definitely a longer term issue that we have to look at.
Correct. And the last item that we had mentioned, Mr. Milazzo had a question previously about an adjustment made in the student activity accounts. I'm glad to say we have an answer for you tonight. So what happened is, in the beginning, at the end of the 15-16 school year, beginning part of this school year, the software program that the middle school student activity accounts uses, QuickBooks, crashed. In order to reboot that program, all entries, receipts, and expenses, along with beginning balances, had to be manually reconstructed in the program. During that process, there was a deposit made into the student council account and one outstanding check that weren't properly accounted for when they reloaded that data into the system. So basically what happened is, from the July 2016 bank statement, QuickBooks created its own general ledger adjustment to reconcile that bank statement against all of the accounts. And what happened is they were able to backtrack, find out what the issue was, and that's where the adjustment was made. So when you see that account, that amount that was expensed on a general ledger adjustment, that was also recorded as a deposit into the student council account. So that is why you don't see any checks or anything. It was just a manual adjustment to account for that deposit. Correct, and that's where it's currently located. So at no point was anything deficient, was any money missing, it just wasn't accounted for in the proper account.
I do have another question about the pool. Because the first time it overflowed, there was supposed to be an alarm system put on it, and apparently we didn't do that.
Yeah, it overfilled, I believe, in April of 2013. I didn't start until August of 2013, so I'm not aware of that. I did discuss with Larry. I know that they looked at alarms. Currently, there's only low-level water alarms that are designed for the pool, because the main function of that is to protect the pumps from burning up,
Correct.
from running dry. So they were not able to find any high-level alarm. What I've suggested and what we're looking into is possibly a timed actuated valve, which would be in a fail-safe closed position, so that we could limit the amount of time that water will fill into the pool before it would automatically shut off.
That should have been put on already. I mean, that's, like with a timer, with any of that. When you have a pool, there's timers, even with the water going in and out or filters.
Not necessarily.
And this happened before Pat was here.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of it, to be honest, until this overfill occurred, and they said, oh, this happened 4 years ago. And I said, well, it must have been before I was here, because it was.
And the other thing is the gym floor, I complained about that too. In the same spot where it flooded, again, because there were still creases in there, separation of the floor from the first time.
There may always be gaps and inconsistencies in wood floors. That's usually filled in with the varnish when they do the sealing process.
There's been, it's pretty much noticeable. It's not, like most gym floors are like tongue and groove, they're all together. That floor from the first flooding had already started to separate. So I'd like to look at that and make sure that it's back to like the tongue and groove that it originally was.
Well, in order to do that, we'd have to replace that
Right,
section of
keep in
floor.
mind that those gaps that do happen get filled with varnish.
Correct.
So while it looks like there's a gap, it's actually filled.
That's normal, and you'd
So-
probably be able to find that in floors in this room.
Is there a deductible off the insurance?
$2,500.
Thank you.
Pat, if I could recommend for the pool in regards to alarms, there are water alarms that could be installed on the floor, so that if water were to overflow onto the floor, you would set the alarms off. I know that these exist because I have them
It
in
would
my
have
house.
been, it would have been nice if when they redid that reconfiguring the pool, they actually put drains on the floor.
Well, that was
so
gonna be my
when it
second
overfilled, the
suggestion
water
is
would-
that-
instead of going in, and it would be better if they had pitched the floor to the outside of the building rather than the inside of the building. Yeah, so there's a lot we're looking at, and that was one of the things that he did mention was an alarm that they could be put on the outside of the pool that once contact was made, it would sound an audible alarm. Our only concern with audible alarm is if that alarm occurs after the building's empty, there may be nobody there to
Well,
hear
you'd have to
it.
connect it to the monitoring service.
Correct. So
I
we
did-
are exploring all those options.
Might also be worth looking into putting drains at the door that get pumped instead of dropped.
Even if we put
automatically.
some type of threshold or a little berm there to offset that.
I have visions of you coming and opening the door and the water just...
Would look like The Shining, right?
I called it Jumanji when I talked to Mike.
When, just so, Pat, just to let you know, when the pool was redone, the surface around the pool was not redone. The pool itself was done and resurfaced. The tiles, that's why that was never done, and the other drains were never added in, because they didn't have the money for that. They just, because the pool had like 3 or 4 holes, leaks in it, that it wasn't holding the water, so they had to refix it.
All right.
They resurfaced it.
And that is all I have, Mr. President.
All right. Now, we're going to move on to personnel for the evening. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the following personnel recommendations as presented. Motion for approval of personnel recommendations, Frank. Second, James. Discussion.
Yes. A few. One, I need something split off.
Sorry,
What?
I can't hear you.
One of them I need to pull and separate, one of the substitutes. More importantly, I apologize, as most of you know, I work a night shift. I do miss the occasional meeting when I'm on nights. 4 of the positions created were in the budget. The social studies teacher was not, so could I get a description on why and what's occurring? Yes.
Get closer.
It's hard to hear, I don't know why. Yes, yes, and yes. Which name did you want pulled off or separated?
The last one, paraprofessional, Nicholas Galella.
Okay.
Any objection to separating Mr. Galella from the rest of the list?
Unless there's a reason, I don't.
Okay.
With the social studies teacher, that was an item that was discussed during the budget as a contingent item. If we had enough breakage, if you remember, before we adopted the budget, there were 2 retirements announced. After we adopted the budget, there were 2 additional retirements announced. That breakage is about $125,000 or so, Mr. Witherow?
Yeah, at least, I would say.
Meaning, so for those 2 additional retirees, we're going to save $125,000 or so. The cost we anticipated for the .6 social studies teacher, which would allow us to fully fulfill or fill out a middle school teaming structure, The cost for that's about 70 or 75,000 dollars or so.
70.
Right. So as one of those contingent items, I said I would bring that to the Board of Education for consideration, which is what is tonight.
Okay, but we're talking about,
Right. We did talk about it last time.
yeah, I wasn't
Sorry.
here.
But that is the position. What that'll allow us to do is put the full-time retirement that we had. We had a retirement in social studies. That full-time person will stay at the middle school, and then the .6 would go to the high school. The way we have it right now is that one full-time that retired is .6 at the high school and .4 at the middle school. So while it's technically a .6 increase to the middle school, really it'll be just 1.0 at the middle school and the .6.
Now, at a .6, what's the difference between a .4 and a .6?
Oh, each .2 is one period. So if you teach .2, you teach one period, .4 is 2 periods, .6 is 3 periods.
Plus on the financial piece contractually, once they hit the .6, they're eligible for benefits.
Benefits, right.
So these are all non-benefit?
The
these
math would be
positions?
not benefit, the social studies would be benefit.
For how many periods?
3 periods. As soon as you're more than half-time, you get benefits.
And it's 75,000.
About 70, 75,000, yeah.
And I still have I still want to discuss the social worker, because when we were doing it, we also said that we would postpone it until February. I would like more data on the, why we need another social worker when we have 3 school psychologists that are over $300,000. You have 2 social workers making over, again, over $200,000. Guidance department, which is also counseling children. So for me, I would like to see the data, how many CSE meetings are being done by our school psychologists, how much counseling, how much testing per month, in order to spend another $100,000 to bring another social worker in. When we did this, again, we've taken away positions, now we're putting everything back. Again, we keep spending money, and we're adding positions back in. And I understand there's, with tough times, parents are divorced, kids need to talk to each other. I believe we need to restructure, hire 1 CSE chair that will free up 3 school psychologists. They do not have to do the meetings, and could be spending more time doing testing, being counseling to children. I mean, that's 3 school psychologists that are doing CSE meetings and doing some, not even counseling. When we can hire someone for $55,000 a year to do CSE meetings and save this district lots of money.
We can't hire someone for $55,000.
Can we just come back to James, because I don't know if he really got fully answered on what he was
I
asking.
have a follow-up to that.
Right.
Sorry, James.
I see certificated, a social studies teacher. Is that teacher going to fill the .6, or is
No.
that teacher going to fill the retirement?
Yes.
Retirement.
No on the
Retire.
.6, yes on the retirement.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a recall, correct?
That is a recall, yes.
Yeah, because of course
With a
you know.
layoff list.
You know I saw the pay stub.
Yes.
Okay, we're good. Thank you.
How many people are left on the layoff list?
It depends upon the area. All told, I think somewhere between 10 and 12.
So
Depends upon the
there were
area, in
over
multiple
60
areas.
people. There were over 60 people that we had to lay off, and there's only 10 left on the layoff list.
Well, yeah.
So we brought basically everybody back, everybody's position that we.
No,
we-
No, you can't look at it like
No.
that, because people retire out.
People also
And
refuse to
we've
come
also
back.
replaced them.
Right.
We
but it
also
but
replaced them,
it's-
so
but it's not,
you're,
no, it's not bringing back positions that were eliminated. Most of that is from people that have retired out.
we laid off quite a few people, and
To the
basically
tune of
what we're
about
doing.
60 people.
Right, and we brought a majority of them in their positions or changed their titles and brought them back. So we're.
I don't know that that's correct at all.
No, we haven't.
Yeah, that's not correct at all. Last year, we
not true.
created 4 positions. This year, we're creating 3.5 positions. That's all I'm aware of. I know that Mr. Di Lorenzo, prior to me, brought back some Spanish and maybe a part-time math, if my memory serves me correctly. I don't know what happened prior to that, but
hire
most of the
anybody prior to
callbacks came back from filling retirements.
The year prior, there were additional reductions.
Reductions, okay. So the callback list gets smaller because people retire, and then those open positions from retirements are offered to people on the callback list.
Or go elsewhere and take themselves off the list.
They're actually still entitled for all 7 years, even if
Right.
they turn it down. It's for
They have to say
paraprofessionals or not, but for the certificated staff, we have to offer to them even if they turn it down. So we're down to about 12 or so, give or take, people that are on the recall list at this point that are still owed jobs for about another 3 years. James, did I answer your question?
I don't think that was mine.
No, you had about the social studies, I don't know.
We're good, thank you.
So for me, with the social worker, I would like to see a report monthly on how many CSE meetings we're doing, how many kids are getting, how many students are getting counseled, how many testings we're doing. To me, this is, again, a lot of money to be putting in when we should be restructuring what we're doing.
But Joanne, and I think we've had this discussion at length, we have hired professionals in this area that we're staying within our guidelines. The voters came out and overwhelmingly approved what we've asked.
Overwhelmingly?
Excuse me. Overwhelmingly approved what we asked for. And we have professionals in this area. It is their job to manage the day-to-day operations of all the programs. It is not our job to micromanage what we believe we know better than they do.
It's not micromanaging, Frank. It's a better way of, I have to tell you, I am involved with this, and I've done this since my children have been little, and I have fought for lots of children in this school district. So I do see it, and I do understand, and I do know, and I am asking for a list every month when it comes to this. To how many CSE meetings are school psychologists, that 3 of them are making over $300,000. This is taxpayers' money. I like to be responsible for people's money. I mean, I don't know about you. You want to spend it, you spend it. But for me, there's no justification for this. We've added 3, plus we have 1 that's on a grant. We have 2 social workers. We have guidance department that does counseling. The middle school guidance department does counseling. So now we're going to add another social worker to do more counseling.
Well,
It doesn't make sense that we keep doing all this.
Unfortunately,
when
it
we're not getting
does.
any kind of data.
If I could help, let me help a little bit. First
We
of
have no
all,
data.
all due respect, every meeting that we appoint, we have a resolution on the agenda for providing services to special education students. You can get a number of meetings that had occurred in the prior period. Those are the meetings, and the date is on the agenda for each of the meetings that have occurred. To do a physical accounting of the number of meetings that have occurred certainly is something that can be provided if it's the pleasure of the entire board, but it's also, it doesn't tell the full story. A single meeting could take an entire day because it takes place an hour and a half away. So it doesn't take the full, it doesn't give you the full picture. I want to also point out, if you recall our 2.5-hour meeting regarding basically this position and one other position, we spent an awful lot of time talking about this hire is not focused on special education students. That doesn't mean that this person as a hire won't work with special education students. It's because we're seeing a major area of concern regarding non-identified students, and the ability to service those students is not coming from the county. Social services from the county is just not there for our students. So we spent a lot of time talking about why this is needed. We certainly can have additional dialogue if this board chooses in executive session regarding very specific cases that our principals can testify about, where we can name names and talk about issues so that you can see the magnitude and gravity of the situation that our principals deal with every single day. The 3 people in this room that I'm looking at right now this week dealt with very substantial issues. We do need this. So that's why I spent the time at that podium stubbornly asking for it, because we need it. So the additional support that you'd be looking for, I would respectfully ask this Board of Education then to say, let's do it story by story in executive session with principals present. Not tonight, we're not prepared for that tonight, but if that's what information this board wants, the whole board, I'm more than happy to give it to you, but it would be better in a private setting.
All I'm asking is for the data. And I didn't say it was only for special ed kids. And I understand that. But again, if we restructured, figured out how we were doing this, how many kids were servicing with IEPs, without IEPs, and finding out who's doing what and who's counseling, we could save money here. And maybe even hire a CSE chair that will, again, free up 3 school psychologists to help with all the children of the school district. Because the school psychologists are not there just for special ed. They are there for every child in this school.
We are doing a restructuring with this hire. That restructuring will allow us to have a primary CSE chairperson that will primarily do CSE chair work, but that doesn't mean that our school psychologists won't also be doing CSE chair work in their schools. You can't do it with just one person. You can't.
Well, I have to tell you, you're right, you can't do it, but you can do it with 2. And there's no need to do more than that. 1, and plus, if they're out of district, there are other people that could be doing that.
Who?
I mean, isn't that part of special education's job, is to run CSE meetings?
Our psychologists are our CSE chairs. Ms. Mealy is a CSE chair.
right.
That's how we
So
structure it.
there's 2.
We are going to be restructuring so there will be a primary CSE chair. You can call it a gatekeeper. That person is going to be responsible for overseeing the CSE process and primarily doing a lot of the CSEs, a preponderance of the CSE meetings. But it's impossible for that person to be in multiple locations, especially during the heavy time, beginning of the school year and annual
So again,
reviews. So yes, there is a team that approaches it.
What you're saying, Mike, is again, we're going to let all 3 school psychologists be CSE chairs, take it away from the children, take it away from what they're doing, the testing and everything else. That's why I says I'd like to see the data that backs this position up, that says every month, this is how many CSE chairs they're doing, CSE meetings. This is how many testing they're doing. This is how many children the guidance department has seen. This is how many children the social worker is dealing with. And I'm not talking about CSE. How many kids actually get counseling that are IEP? How many kids I mean, how many meetings are you running every month to tie up
Ms.
3
Reed,
school psychologists?
all due respect, if I provide you with that information, will it allow you to vote yes? Because I don't know how much more information I can provide than detailed. I mean, those numbers won't necessarily convince you, because I don't know that
They
you're
will
convinced we
convince
need
me
the
because
position.
if you only
So
have
I'm telling you,
20 CSE meetings
our
a month,
numbers are absolutely justified on the special ed side. This new hire is for non-special ed services.
So my question is, without the approval right now, have we already posted this job and already do we have people in line for the job? So without our permission, have we already done the interviews?
We absolutely have posted it. Buildings have begun the interview process. I am starting to look at finalists. Absolutely.
But we post all anticipated vacancies that way and start the process. We always have.
I made a commitment to this Board
Not
of
always, Frank.
I made a commitment to this Board of Education
Not
and this
always.
staff that we are going to start the staffing process as early as possible. We began posting anticipated openings based upon retirements that we are anticipating and the trajectory of the budget deliberations. As soon as that process started to look like it was going to bear some fruit, where the board was going to adopt a budget, we put out anticipated postings the very next day. So you guys voted on adopting the budget Thursday night. Friday, the anticipated posting goes out. That allows us to meet the minimum requirement of 5 days posting for the MFA contract and the paraprofessionals contract. And then that also allows resumes to start flowing through the online application system. As soon as the budget was voted on, principals got going with interview process because it takes time. Not only do we interview candidate pool, we also have demo lessons for all teaching positions. That takes time. I anticipate that the preponderance of any new positions that are adopted tonight and retirement positions will be on either the June 15th meeting or the July 13th meeting. That is the challenge I gave to our principal staff, is to meet those 2 deadlines. I don't want to wait until August to appoint, because we want to get the best candidates. The only way to get the best candidates is to get as early in the process as possible. That's the commitment that I made to this group that's sitting up at the dais and also in the audience.
And when would they start these positions?
September 1st.
That's only a good business decision to get out there and try and get people before other districts pick them up. You know, just if they know that it's there, you don't want to wind up what's left in the pool. You want to be in the beginning of the process.
We also have 3 areas that are very, very hard to get. We've got a science opening, we've got 2 Spanish openings, and we have an English as a new language opening.
And they're all
Very,
retiring?
very difficult openings.
Are those teachers all retiring?
Retiring or resigned.
Mr. Brooks, when you say that you had a, just this week alone, for example, the elementary school was dealing with X amount of cases. So if you could just give me an idea, what happens when the administration is dealing with this? Do they automatically pull one of our currently staffed social workers for crisis intervention? Or do they stay where they are and we do what?
Mrs. Walsh, are you comfortable talking about? Actually, the 3 of you may want to chime in.
I'm not
Damien,
asking
Deb.
for specific detail. I just want to know,
right.
in a crisis situation, no matter what happens, do you pull a social worker that is currently employed by this district?
Gotta get the microphone.
But what, so I guess my question would be, in a crisis situation, if we have an employed social worker, a crisis situation calls for them to come.
Absolutely.
Just like the police.
Absolutely. It's sort of an all hands on deck. We're all, Shaniqua and I both deploy. The social worker comes. If the psychologist was available or if we felt the need, we would call anyone that we needed.
So what would be
Nurse.
the reason they wouldn't be available? They'd be out of the district?
They could be out of the district, they could be out of the building. That would really be the only reason. We would make that call. If we knew that they were in attendance that day, we would make that call.
Typically, social workers aren't going to be outside the building unless there's some special meeting happening. Psychologists are more frequently out because they're going to remote locations or other buildings for CSE meetings. That's one of the reasons why we want to centralize with one to pull some of that out-of-district casework off of the 3 that we have.
But the social workers they shouldn't be leaving their building. That's why they were there. That's what the whole thing was for, was to have them there and to be in the building.
I don't want to paint a picture that our staff is driving all around. They're in our buildings. But there are times when they need to be out of the
You have a social worker
building,
there,
so.
and you have a school psychologist in the elementary. We have a school psychologist at the middle school, and we have a social worker at the middle school.
Yes.
We also have a school psychologist at the high school.
Yes.
And we also have a
Student
counselor.
assistance counselors, yeah.
Right, at the high school.
Yes.
And we also have another psychologist, which is doing testing right now.
Correct.
So, I mean, you're telling me out of 3 buildings, if there was an emergency, not one of them can come down because one of them's out of the district.
Do you want to?
I just want to kind of bring the focus back to the need at the elementary school. Yes, there's a psychologist in every building. The elementary school has almost 900 students. The social worker that's assigned there has over 40 students on her counseling caseload. So the majority of her day is IEP mandated counseling, which she's pulled, rightfully so, for crisis situations. The additional social worker at the elementary school would allow all the IEP services to continue to happen and the other social worker support non-CSE related issues and or CSE related issues if need be. But the amount of time that the current social worker has to support administration with regular education students in crisis is very little. And it's a delicate balance at the elementary school, and Ms. Cameron and Mrs. Walsh try to handle as much as they can themselves, but you do sometimes need the expertise of a social worker. So every time that the social worker's pulled, the majority of the time she's missing a counseling session, which we have to try to then make up. So having that additional person at the elementary school would eliminate.
It would also
the
help
lack
us to
of
move
social-
out of crisis mode and more into preventative
Prevention.
mode.
So that tells me that our school psychologist is actually not doing any counseling. It is only doing CSE meetings. So you're telling me out of the 182 days a year that we are in school, or 180 days that we're in school, she's at a CSE meeting every day.
I did not say that at all.
Well, basically, because the school psychologist also should be
I
counseling.
can tell you,
So
I
if
was
you're
in the
telling me that
building,
social
for
worker's
example,
doing
the other
40,
day, there was 2 separate incidences occurring at the same time. The social worker had one student, the psychologist had the other. So it's inappropriate to say the the psychologist, excuse me, is not participating in those issues because they are.
Well, are they doing counseling?
They do.
Are they doing
I
counseling?
do. The social worker does mandated counseling because I can bill Medicaid. So that's
You
an
can bill
opportunity for us to
And how many
gain
of
some
them-
money
wait,
back.
How many of them are Medicaid driven?
I cannot bill
10,
Medicaid for
20,
a psychologist.
30?
I think we
40?
gave that number a couple
It was- it
meetings
was
ago
only
with
a
the
very
dollar
low-
amount.
We
it
did
was
talk
a very-
about
it was a
Medicaid
very low
eligible
number.
students.
It was a very low number, so that's telling me that the school psychologist is not counseling any children, because what you're saying is they're mandated to go through the social worker, but not everybody gets
So
Medicaid and Medicare.
the school psychologist also helps support behavior plans within the building for special ed and regular education students. They're a consultant to the teachers to help develop reentry plans for students who have had either suspensions or medical outplacements. They work with the classroom teacher to support in-classroom behaviors, and that could be for any child.
Well, then, how come we didn't get the data for this in the monthly reports? We should be getting a data every month about what is going on, who's doing what, how they're doing it. I mean, just to come in and say, here, let's hire somebody else for $100,000, it's just very upsetting to know that we have all these people here, and rather we need to restructure what we're doing, or come up with the data that proves that we actually need this. All you're saying is, well, she's got 40. Well, then maybe the middle school doesn't have 40. Maybe she only has 20 because there's guidance counselor up there. Maybe we can bring her down and maybe have them go down to the elementary and work a couple of hours. Bring somebody like from the high school. Let her go down to the elementary and work. To restructure, but to spend another $100,000 on somebody else, and that I have no data that says, this is what this one's doing, this is how this is doing, this is the guidance department, we have 40 kids that are mandated by IEP, oh wait, 30 of them are going to the guidance department to get counselors. I don't have anything other than, here, we want to hire somebody else. I have
Guidance
no data
counselors
that
don't do
says
IEP
that they're
mandated
doing
counseling?
IEP or without even IEP driven, that says that we need to hire another social worker or another school psychologist. So for me, I just, there's no proof that we need to restructure when, like I said, if the middle school doesn't have, send them down for 2 hours. Let them help. If the high school has time, let them go down and help. I mean, that's the way it should be doing, not that we're sitting here all day long, let's hire somebody else. Let's keep hiring on more people. We are not out of the woods as far as money-wise and as far as when we lost, when Helios came in, we still have a pilot that has to be renegotiated. I'm not willing to spend all this money constantly. I'm sorry, but I have to look at the taxpayers' dollar and what they're paying, their house taxes and everything else. And we just keep adding positions.
But Joanne, you keep saying that. The budget vote was very clear. It wasn't like it was a close budget vote. Overwhelmingly, the voters came out in support of the plan we put forward.
And we also said that we were going to hire the social worker in the meeting in February.
We didn't
No,
say
we
that.
never
We were
said
going
that.
to put- we
You
said that-
kept saying you wanted that.
Can you just, for clarity's sake, staff in the buildings, one psychologist in each building,
There's one psychologist in each building.
and then
Currently,
there's
a 4th
two social
psychologist.
workers. There'll be, if this were to pass, there'd be 2 social workers at the elementary,
That is our plan.
1 at the middle school,
Correct.
and then the guidance staff. And then the special counselor up
And
at
there's
the
also
middle school.
none of
Assistant
the
counselor at the
site-
high school level.
Right.
And the high school and the middle school.
Right.
School also do counseling.
Right. Are there any other questions on the personnel agenda?
I would like to thank Mary Ibsen for all her time served and everything that she's done. She is a teacher with a lot
Yes.
of empathy and compassion. So I would like to thank her for her time and all the
Yes.
years that she has put in for the children of the school district.
So yes, Mary is retiring from us at the end of the school year with gold card, so congratulations to Mary. Other questions on the personnel agenda?
Can we separate that out,
Separate what out?
the personnel, the created positions, please?
Anybody object to separating out the social worker?
No, I didn't say, just,
The entire list, or?
Just that position, separating it out.
What do you want?
She just wants to vote on that separate.
I thought she just said the creation of positions.
She said creation of positions.
Well, I did. I mean, I'll do this, I would like to do the social worker separate.
Do you want to do the whole list separate, or do you want to just do the social worker
We can
separate?
do just the social worker.
Okay. Anybody object to that?
Well, she get a second. Somebody, any of us.
Second? James, any objection? Okay. So with that, we are going to move to vote on everything except the social worker, the creation of the social worker, and the appointment of Nicholas Galella. So, Russell?
Yes.
James, Jeff?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Now we are going to move to the social worker position. Russell?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
No.
Myself, yes. And then to the appointment of Mr. Galella. Russell?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
James?
I'm just going to say he's a fine young man, and I know him, so I will abstain.
Abstain. Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
And myself. All right, go ahead.
Oh, you want?
I was going to point out the presence of somebody.
There
But
you
if
go.
you were going to
No,
do the same thing?
It's all you, yes.
We would like to welcome back Mr. James Ventriglia, a social studies teacher who was on that list of cuts. Welcome back. Anything to add?
Yes, I met for a brief period of time with Jimmy, and let me tell you, if there's someone with passion, he's sitting right there. I can't wait to see that passion in the classroom. All right. He's got the right name.
On to item number 9, budget transfers. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, authorizes the following transfers for the 2016-17 school year as presented. Motion for approval of budget transfers. Frank, second. James, discussion.
What are these other than supplies? Patrick, is it $22,000 just for the fuel, the natural gas line that we?
No, this is money moving out of the natural gas and electricity lines into supplies and materials lines. Every year, what we try and do is if we have money left over in any of the accounts, we give Larry the authorization to start purchasing supplies towards next year's needs. So this is adjustment of those two lines so that he can buy supplies towards next year.
So he's got $44,000 in his budget now?
Well, he's got a lot more than that in his budget, but that's what this transfers for,
So we're
yes.
adding another $44,000 to his budget that he has for next year?
No, you're rearranging money from this current year's budget, from two line codes that he already has access to another line code that he has access to. You're not adding money to his budget. The 1620 is Larry's budget.
Right,
So
that's
all of these are movements within Larry's budget.
That's not right.
Existing money that
So in
already.
other words, we were $22,000 over what we anticipated in spending on the gas line, correct?
No, that's incorrect.
We spent less in electricity and natural gas than expected or than budgeted, and now it's being moved to supplies and materials.
That's correct,
That's what I'm
Mr.
saying,
Bell.
there's more, there's extra money there.
Right, well, we
Well,
didn't spend as
we
much as
didn't-
we thought.
Right,
Pow-
that's
Power
what
and
I'm saying,
electricity was
so-
cheaper this year.
Wouldn't
I hope
we
there's
put
extra
that-
money in
wouldn't
every
we put
line
that money
item at
back
the
in
end of the
general
year.
fund?
Excuse me?
Wouldn't we put that money back in the general fund instead of adding it to a supply list?
Yeah, but if you can buy supplies now for next year,
Right,
it'll
but here-
offset cost in next year's budget.
Correct.
Right, but he already has a budget, so we're adding to his budget.
No, we're just moving money in his budget to purchase
This
items
money,
in
Joanne,
advance.
this money
Right,
all
more money.
exists.
Not more money,
This
just
money
same
all
money, yeah.
currently exists in Larry's budget.
He just didn't need
Everything
it for
in the
electricity, so now he's gonna buy road salt.
1620 code is Larry's budget. So this is moving money within Larry's budget. It already exists. We're not adding any additional money to Larry's budget. We do that in the last transfer at the bottom.
Thanks, Pat. Other questions on the budget transfer? Russell? Yes. Jeff?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Some contracts. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the following contracts as presented. Motion for approval of the contracts. Frank, second. James, discussion?
I have one. It says that Patrick will be signing the board clerk. Wouldn't the superintendent sign that, not the board clerk?
No, this is they want the district clerks to sign.
Other questions? Russell? Yes. Jeff? Yes. James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Item number 11, resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the resident request for transportation to non-public schools for the 2017-18 school year as presented. Motion for approval of non-public transportation roster. Jeff, second. James, discussion. Russell? Yes. Jeff?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the first reading of the following board policies. Section 7,000, Section 8,000. Motion for approval of the policy reading. Frank, second. Joanne, discussion.
There's one section that's not included, though, correct?
Correct. Policy, gosh, Frank, what was the number? 8430 or 8320 or?
I'm thinking 7280.
I thought it was a 7,000. Hold on.
It's the 7330 is the 7,000 section, and it's the policy on search and interrogations, and the policy on field trips are not included.
If anybody gets really bored and wants about a week's worth of reading,
7,000 is long.
Oh,
7,000 is about 200 pages.
okay, it's,
We have them down here, by the way, if you need them.
No, I'm
We have a
good.
paper print.
I don't need to see it
yeah,
again.
it was 8460.
And 7330.
Sounds good.
Okay.
We went back and forth so many times.
7320, 7325, and 7330 are the ones that are going to be consolidated into. 'Cause
Right.
Two of those didn't get acted on last time.
Right.
We can't, well,
Okay.
we're fixing it. But yes, those two policies are pulled out of these two sections. That's for further review by the policy committee.
All right. Russell? Yes. Jeff? Yes. James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Is there any old business this evening?
I have one. I had asked for a report on the buses, which we were going to look into, or they were getting together. So is that at the
Yep,
next meeting?
Mr. Martucci is working on compiling that information.
Thank you.
So I don't know if we'll have it for next meeting, but we'll definitely have it before the start of the next school year.
Okay, thank you.
Other old business? Any new business?
I have a question. With Regents Week coming up, I know the life skills classes are in school. When they're doing that, have they put a separate location for them to go?
As in the past, the prep class will have 1 week of activities outside of the building during Regents Week, and the second week they do have off like the other high school students.
Okay, but that's, because I have to tell you, I'm the one that fought for that, and when we brought these children back, it was set up with the Board of Education that they would go until the same time the elementary school goes. And I'm a little upset that you're saying that, because that was the whole idea of bringing these children back into the district, that it would be saving the district money, but they would be getting their education also. So I find that very sad to see that you just, okay, they don't have to come, that's it. It took a long time to fight for that, to get them to keep their education going.
Joanne, I understand your passion for that program. That program has since developed from just the high school program to now 4 classes at the elementary school and 1 at the middle school. It is definitely a main priority of the special ed department to foster those students and give them the education they need. The students that are currently in the prep class have gotten all their support services that they require, and they are currently in that program because that is the best place for them to be.
Correct, and when we set this up, that was the whole thing, was they would come back as a, like, just ran it like BOCES. So when
typical
BOCES
high
shut their
school
day off,
student.
that's when we shut ours off. And that was the whole idea, because those programs, especially the life skills programs, saved this district over $1 million, and that was it agreed upon about bringing them back. So why are we bringing them back if you're going to cut them loose a week or 2 weeks earlier than the regular day?
It's 4 days prior to the end of the school year, and they get an additional week's worth of classes and activities than the traditional high school student. So they are getting additional
Again,
supports.
it had nothing to do with the high school student. And
They're
again,
high school students.
I don't really care if they're high school students. That wasn't the agreement that we had with the Board of Education when we brought these children back.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
Well, not that I feel that way. That's the way it was set up with the past board. Okay? Because we brought them back, and it was supposed to run like a BOCES program. But apparently, it doesn't matter.
Other new business.
I have to say something. It matters a lot.
No, it doesn't.
It matters
And
a lot.
I think I need to leave. No, it doesn't. Because apparently it was ignored. It has been put in place, it's undone.
Other items for the evening? At this time, I'd like to offer anybody in the...
I had a question in regards to year-end finish, in regards to the high school. Finishing curriculum and having time to wrap up and prepare for regions. Is there a process that actually happens that we know whether or not all of the teachers have finished their curriculum for the year and, you know, are not going up until the last minute and then, you know, say a day and the kids have to a packet to study for a day? I mean, is there a process that is like a checks and balance?
It's a great question. I don't know if we can pass that to Ms. Hecht. I don't know if there's a real good answer immediately. You want to repeat that just?
So in regards to the high school, the children that, all of them obviously, that have to take final exams and regions exams, for the classes, is there a system that is in place that we know that all of the teachers have finished the curriculum in, you know, a good amount of time, so there is preparation time for the final?
I would believe that the curriculum maps that we write are done monthly, weekly, so that is how it's laid out. I just actually had a discussion today with the department chair in social studies, and we were discussing how that they continue to teach, but then maybe in some circumstances use the Friday for the review for the regions, but then continue to teach. So it depends on the department and its ongoing collaboration and discussions. I don't know if Mr. Lawler wants to add anything to that.
So as Ms. Hecht stated, there is a lot of collaboration between the department chairs and members of the department. We have the curriculum maps. There's an expectation that the material is covered in the curriculum. You know, if there's a specific concern, I'd like, you know, to address that with anybody that has that concern. But I do see review going on. I do also see what Mrs. Hecht says, that some days I see new material being covered, other days I see Regents exams being taken and assigned. As an example, I think almost every student in math had a practice test to practice Regents over the Memorial Day weekend that they had, you know, time to take. Certainly I saw that in algebra and geometry. So I think there's a blend of the two things that are happening at once, that material is being finished and there's also, you know, preparation for the exam.
Thanks.
Any other items? With that, we'll open the meeting to the public. Anybody that has any questions or comments for the board, please approach the podium, speak into the microphone, state your name and town, and address the Board of Education. Mark?
Mr. Brooks, during the discussion of the creation of these positions, it was mentioned that the social studies position was talked about in an executive session. was it talked about in a generic sense, or was it talked about a particular person? And likewise, I extend that question to all the other positions.
Right, great. Any of the discussions that we've had in the executive session were regarding a specific person, particularly relating to callback lists or particular people, so yes.
Okay.
It wasn't a budgetary discussion behind closed doors.
Or generic discussion, generic, I mean.
It was specific.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Cantone.
John Cantone, resident of Marlboro. I know I am between you and executive session, and I'll try to make this quick, but I do want to talk about the presentation that I missed last meeting. I very much appreciate the printed copy, Teresa, and the email copy. I really wanted to come to that meeting, but unfortunately I was out of town. And as you guys know, I've been bringing topics up related to measurements of success and how we validate that the investments we're making are actually becoming successful. So I have a point of view I want to share with you, and I'm going to wear my hat as a parent of 2 students in elementary and middle school and a community member, and try to forego the fact that I'll be on the other side of this podium in a month. And I do have a suggestion that I'd like to actually formalize into a request when I finish my point of view. So first of all, as you recall, when we had the budget meeting last year, I was very surprised to see that we had the academic issues that were being raised. And I started immediately asking questions as to how did you determine we have these problems, and how did you determine that the positions that we're bringing forth are going to address that, and how we're going to measure it on an ongoing basis. And I brought that up a couple of times during the year, waiting for some kind of report that we would get. So what we saw in the fall and what we've seen again in May is this New York State report card. And my point of view is none of the data in this report can draw any kind of conclusion that answers those questions. Nor does it answer, I believe, Mr. Brooks, your question of how do we know we're teaching the right things? How do we know we're teaching it well? And it's not because of any fault of anyone in this district. It's really because, in my opinion, what the state has done with these tests and the whole Common Core curriculum and the politicization of the whole thing, it's become pretty much useless. And I say that for several reasons. One, you talked at length about the opt-out problem, right? Anywhere from 25 to 40% of this district didn't take the tests. That percentage even goes higher throughout the state. This year, we were one of the lowest in Mid-Hudson Valley, according to the Poughkeepsie Journal stats that I read, but those same stats are out there in the rest of the state, right? So you have this absentee of population, which when you look at the numbers, how can you validate any of these numbers against either our school district or the state or anywhere else which they're intended with when you have such an empty population that's not taking it, right? Second, there's several other factors. One is the content keeps changing. Every year the content changes. Teachers are regularly complaining that the content doesn't match the curriculum and that they're skewed for a level of complexity that's not accurate. Even though it's gotten better, it's still there, right? The duration has changed. Now there's no time limit on a test. So a student with a 90 that takes it in 2 hours is equated to a student that takes it in 7 hours. Which doesn't make sense. And you all brought up a point too that I hadn't even thought of, which is the attitude of kids and even their parents is that it doesn't count. So even if I'm taking it, I'm not studying, I'm not preparing, I don't care, right? Now, I understand and recognize all of you are going to great lengths to try to reconcile data from people who didn't take the tests to the ones that did, that you're trying to encourage them to take it, you're trying to incent them in various ways. And I applaud you for doing that. But in the end, it really almost doesn't matter, because if you have that kind of opt-out rate and you have all these variables that makes the data without a baseline, without a foundation, how can you possibly draw any conclusions and make decisions based on that information, right? So in my view, while I know you have to do it and you have to continue to do it and you're doing all the right things to try to improve the scores, in the end, I can't see this data as any measurement of your success on a regular basis. It just can't be. And again, no fault of yours, but how can you? I mean, this is really more applied, I should have said at the beginning, middle school and elementary, but because you don't have that opt-out problem, and the regions have been a little more stable, at least in recent years, than in the past. So I don't think you've still answered the questions. So I have a solution, or at least a suggestion, which I'd like to turn into a request, formalize it however I need be, either as a resident, a community member who's waiting to see whether the value has come back for the investments you've made in the last couple of years, hundreds of thousands of dollars of new positions, and any kind of correlation that's actually worked. So here's my suggestion. You already have the data, other data that you can use. It's page 3 is the multiple measures of assessment, various things you have here, independent of the state tests. I would like to make a request for the district to come up with their own report card. Quarterly, come up with a report with a set of metrics that you all determine is the most important and the most meaningful to answer the question, how do we measure success? How do we correlate it to the investments you're making, all of them or some of them or whatever, and how do we report that to the community on a quarterly basis? When the report cards come out to the students, there should be a correlating district report card that starts to say, these are the trends we're seeing, these are the results we're seeing. This is where we see things working, here's where things aren't working, here's where we're making some adjustments. I think that's valuable for yourselves as well, because I don't think you're giving yourselves enough credit. I know teachers are frustrated. Every time they see these reports, they get aggravated because people look at it as a measure of their success and their accountability to it. And in fact, it's not fair. It's not even close. With all the variables we just said, there's no way you can say a teacher's successful or not by looking at these data. You can see some uptick, yeah, but 40% of people aren't taking it. So what does that mean? Maybe the percentage that didn't take it would have put my daughter at maybe sits at 90, I'm making this up, at 70 or at 100 because you don't know how good those people are would have tested, right?
Can I give you a little taste of something too? I appreciate the sentiment, and I think what you're describing actually happens every month. There's a series of reports that Ms. Hecht and I review every single month that's put out through the departments and the grade levels that really does spend an awful lot of time on exactly what you just said. Really digging deep into those multiple measures, not necessarily in direct empirical chart review. It's more of looking at it from a qualitative perspective that's fed by a quantitative look at the information. And when we look at those reports that are provided to us by the entire department through the department chair and the grade level people, that's where we really truly get a value as to tweaks and adjustments to curriculum. So I think that there's tremendous value there that would be very difficult to turn into a number. That's part of the problem.
And I would leave it to you to figure out how. I am not saying this because I think you need to be micromanaged, but I'm taking the perspective as a parent who was very concerned when I saw these academic numbers that you were saying weren't good, we needed to improve. I don't know where you are. As a community member who's approved 2 budgets to increase staff by $480,000 last year, $380 this year, I don't know if there's a correlation to whether it's working or not. And as a future board member, which now I'm going to have increased accountability like the rest of you, to make sure all that's happening, I'm really worried. now I got to seat at the table, and I'm going to be held accountable by the same people I'm talking about as a parent and a community member, right? So again, I am confident you're doing it. I'm not sitting here saying, trying to beat you up in any way, but I think you should, again, I don't want to tell you how, but I believe if you put a challenge to your administrators, your department chairs, your teachers, your principals, and says, we have a need to develop our own report card, but in parallel to the state report card, because you can't stop that. I understand you have to do that. I know it's a ton of work, and this is more, but you're already doing it. Put together a comprehensive report in your way, your words, your visuals, whatever you think, and it's not going to be done in the first time. You're going to have to, it's an iterative basis, and show that quarterly, and let's see what you're doing. I really think it would be valuable to everybody, and I'd like to formally make that request. If this isn't formal enough, tell me how, or if I'll wait till I'm on the board and I'll make a motion or whatever the right protocol is, but I want to make a formal request. However I do that, we don't have to deal with it tonight, but that's what I'm asking, because I honestly believe you are doing way more than you're showing. And there's 6 pages. Sorry I'm getting excited about this. You can tell I'm passionate about it because numbers and data analysis is what I do. And I have a vested interest. My kids are in this school, and I see the successes they're having. I see what programs you're doing. And I know that teachers are frustrated because they're being measured on stuff that doesn't even apply not because it wouldn't if it was done right. I'm actually a proponent of
They're
the
not being measured
principles.
anymore. Remember, the state made changes.
I don't mean formally, but they know they are looked
That
at.
was the
right?
biggest argument,
I
that
mean,
they
there's
were being
17.
measured, right?
There's 17 charts here, right? So they're looking at it, right? Anyway, I said enough, but I would like to formalize that because I really believe this district needs to do that for itself, but also to let people know what you're doing is working or not working, and if it's not working, what you're doing to adjust, because I'm sure you're doing this on a monthly basis. I'm only asking for a quarterly report. When the kids' report cards come out, let's do a district report card. You guys figure it out. You know best how and what is the most meaningful measurements, and make a cadence out of it. What's your outcomes? Measure outcomes. All the words you're using, Mr. Brooks, are exactly the ones I would use if I was trying to develop a management system. So I'm confident you're all doing it. There is no evidence of it, and it's unfair to you, and I think it's unfair to the district parents and community members who keep voting on budgets and don't know whether it's working or not.
Thank you.
Okay, you can tell me how to do that request, whatever, or if this is good enough. I'm happy. Thank you.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more offline about what next steps would be.
Okay.
Fill out a form in triplicate.
I have, that made me think of something. As we approach the end of the year and report cards are going to be coming out, do we have I don't want to say the word standard, but do we have protocol for the narrative part of the report card? I know that I've heard throughout the last few quarters that parents have gotten frustrated with example. Johnny is improving. You know, sometimes because you're looking at numbers, 2, 3, 4, 1, you're looking
Actually, with the elementary school, it's letters.
Yeah, well, you're looking at those and you're wondering, okay, so this is in a range, but I know other districts, they have very specific criteria for that narrative part. And, you know, speaking from a parent perspective, I look forward to reading that, and I know it's time consuming, and I know that teachers pull their hair out of their heads when they have to do that. But I just think that that aspect of it is also very beneficial to the testament of what is happening and what progress is being made or what progress could be made.
Sure.
Or
It's a good question. Let me look into it, and if we don't have a standard, we'll create one.
Anyone else? We do have executive session scheduled for the reasons are proposed pending or current litigation and proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property and employment history of a particular persons. Do we expect action afterwards? We do not expect action afterwards. I would like to make a motion to invite John Cantone to join us in executive session. Can I have a second, Frank? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? John, you are formally invited to join us in executive session. All in favor, motion to go into executive session. James? Huh? Frank?
Frank or James?
Bill I made the motion. Motion to go into exec. James, second. Jeff? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Have a good evening.